But first of all, let's get your view. What's your take so far on the insecurity?
Well, any sane Nigerian would agree with us, with the general feeling that insecurity has denied us a lot of investment. It has created palpable fear in the polity. It has dislocated, our psyche, and that also leading to a polarization, of the country. We are much more divided today than ever before, and if you look at the happenings every day you pick newspaper, you are going to see one killing too many. So for me, I think the government that is vested with the responsibility as provided in the Constitution of ensuring the safety of lives and property ought to change tactics and stop advertising or announcing its own tactics in a way that even the people you are trying to combat, the people you are trying to confront, will also get to know what you're trying to do. I hear, there was a security meeting 2 days ago, and yesterday I was watching the news, and I think it was yesterday, and I was watching the news, and they said they want to change tactics. You don't need to announce to us that you are changing tactics. Let us begin to see results. Let's begin to see results. Let's begin to see action. Let's begin to see the output of your closed door meetings, because when those doors are closed, nobody gets to know what is being discussed. When they are open, we want to see the action on the field. I know you telling us on TV, because when you expose your strategy, you are changing tactics now and all of that, the people who you want to go and fight know that you want to change tactics. You don't need to tell us. So I think it is unstrategic on the part of government to be doing that, and this is not the first time, several other times. Let us begin to see that you are pounding. Yeah. You are shelling these guys. And I think what has been happening in Zamfara in the last 3-4 days is giving us some level of succor. Because there's more renewed vigor in confronting these terrorists. And when people call them bandits, I tend to disagree. They are terrorists because the kind of daring action they carry out is becoming very, very disturbing. And the country is heavily polarized. We don't have unanimity of purpose. We see people as second-class and top-class citizens in their country. Some people have been treated more, as first class than others. And so all of these internal schisms, tend to, also frustrate efforts that should ordinarily, be put in place.
We saw Governor Akeredolu come out to say that citizens are living in fear. I'm sure that's something that people would call cliche, because already before that statement, a lot of people have said, they fear even going by road to the nearest, closest, cities. Yeah. But then let's look at this issue of the Miyetti Allahs conversation on open grazing or anti-grazing law. One of the things I have said that is that anti-open grazing laws, if it's allowed, would negate the economic activities of the pastoralist and would also look at, at an issue of their human rights, because they have a right to move from one place to another. However, people have also said it's also going to enable state government to be able to manage issues of banditry and terrorism, to be able to identify and also understand who the strangers are within the city centers. Do you agree with the conversation on that?
Well, let me first of all commend Akeredolu, Governor Akeredolu, and also Masari for the kind of utterances they've made in the last 48 hours. Masari came out bold and clear to say this thing is being done majorly by this ethnic stock, and we should stop pretending about it. And it too is also putting in place measures to enact a law that will ban open grazing. He even went further to say it was un-Islamic. That's fine. At least someone who is also lettered in Islam and Arabic education is also talking to those who are claiming that they are doing what you call Islamic fundamentalism and all of that. That is one aspect. The second aspect is the kind of tolerance, the kind of body language of the federal government with respect to incendiary statements by Miyetti Allah is one of the reasons that is promoting this kind of open day boldness expressed by the Miyetti Allah officials. You see, in modern times, if officials of Miyetti Allah could still gallivant about, talking about pastoralism in the era of ranching and what have you, it shows that the leaders are profiting from those kind of barbarity. You are even punishing the cow the more by making that cow a beast of burden rather than being, you know, an animal that should be cultivated for its economic value. You are taking that cow to travel for thousands of kilometers, north to south, in your own estimation, seeking for greener pastures. Whereas you can get times 10 of the economic value of that cow if ranching were to be cultivated. Now, it shows you the mentality of an average Miyetti Allah official, because they want to tell you that, oh, one of them is in government. And the government is not doing anything about those kind of provocative statements. I've watched that guy several times, I think the secretary, several times on TV, where he even lambasted a particular ethnic state of the Southwest, calling them all manners of names and threatening them with issue of electoral, whatever, if they don't use it, that they will not smell government and all of that. You can see the arrogance. But do you blame them? The presidency will not do anything, will not even utter statements. But Governor Autumn just complained and lamented about the kind of situation that his people are going through. You saw even people from Benue, the Minister Akume, holding a world press conference and trying to say that she will apologize to the president. Arrogant nonsense. We should be able to speak truth to power for once. People are dying, and anybody who dies with the kind of bloodletting, you know, rivers of blood flowing from the north to the south, are you going to bring them back? So whatever measure you are putting in place should be to mitigate the onslaught that has been brought upon us by the body language of the federal government and other persons who are making insensitive statements that are capable of leading this country into some kind of war.
All right.
So for me, Akeredolu should be encouraged, should be emboldened, and it should please go ahead. Heaven should not fall. And Miyetti Allah should know that nobody has monopoly of violence in this country. That some of us have received Western education, we want to be civilized in our conduct, does not mean that we can be cowardly when it comes to confronting them.
Is that
all right? Let's have Sam Smila Musa part of the conversation now. You were the president of the coalition of Northern Groups.
Now, Director of Strategy and Programs.
Director of Strategy and Programs. Yeah. Let me start by asking you why it appears to be that there's no unanimity of purpose as far as the issue of open grazing is concerned. Well, the southern governors may have taken their decision, have gone ahead to implement it. But just a handful of the governors in the north have said, well, that's the way to go. The governor of Kano State, for instance, and most recently, the governor of Katsina State, the home state of the president, a state that itself has been battered seriously by the activities of bandits. It's more or less setting steps towards what appears to be a ban on open grazing as well. First and foremost, do you think open grazing should be banned?
Well, I think the first thing to ask is there a security challenge in the country? Yes, there is. Is there the issue of farmers' headers clashes? Yes, that is true. And then, who are the people? Because when you say, I'm a farmer, and this person owns, has cows, what do you call him? You understand? He must be given a name, so he's a header, right? So if you walk into my farm and your cows feed on my, my farm produce, what do we call that? You understand? So holistically looking at it is, look, beyond this person is a header, this person is a farmer, or this person is a southerner, or this person is a northerner, we have a security issue. We need to address what is it. Forget about the names you call the people involved. Yeah. You understand? You need to focus on the crime. If there's a crime being involved in it, how do you solve it first and foremost? You understand? Because it needs to be addressed once and for all. What we keep doing is we keep shifting the evil days. You understand? Because this has lingered from the days where we're calling them, oh, farmer, header, clashes, or a farmer and a Fulani man had issues in the farm, you know, somebody was butchered and all of that. Beyond all that, it has come to a stage that this whole thing is now being escalated to a level that even the government seems to be incapable of addressing it. You understand? So when some people come together to say, look, okay, the people who are causing this problem, the security reports have identified that this is the road they usually take, and this is where we're having these issues. Who is going to rein them in? You understand? And if the governors decided to say, okay, because what we just try to say, we want to avoid some ethnic profiling, but addressing security issues is a welcome thing across board. You understand? And everybody needs to sit up, because it's happening in the north, it's happening in the south. You understand? Maybe its level of tolerance might be different, because if as a Hausa person you see a Fulani man as your brother, the Southerner might not see it in that regard. I mean, we're all Nigerians, we can all say we're brothers, but you see, to a large extent we know this country has never been divided to this extent, just like you mentioned. So really there's a need to sit down. And when I say sit down, I mean, I'm not talking about calling for all these jamborees we always had. Oh, the leaders of this, the leaders of this come together in the hall, and then everybody delivers speech, you clap, and then you go back to you understand? The government needs to put its foot on the ground to say, this is the way to go.
Now,
right?
Ismaila, the government doesn't seem to have taken such moves that you're asking for. It's left for the subnationals to take that move, and that's why Southern State had taken that move and said, okay, let's start this way. But the reaction from the federal government, the presidency in particular, was totally opposed to that. And you've seen certain groups like, you know, we've seen them reported like yesterday and even before then, the Miyetti Allah Kautal Hore, and said, look, banning open grazing is, using the exact word they use, is satanic. And even going as far as saying, warning that if you don't do something about this law, the security situation in your state is not going to be friendly. I mean, when you hear those kind of sound bites, and yet you look up at the presidency and it's totally mute to it, how does it help the situation? Because in the first place, before you even convene this kind of conversation you're talking about, we must see some level of, you know, rhetorics, if I may use that word, and actions, followed by actions that seem such as that, well, this is where you stand on this particular matter.
Yeah, okay, you see, when the issue of Kankara school boys happened, you know, we had an interface, we visited the scene of the crime, we eventually had a meeting with the governor, and he categorically said to us, look, I've been dealing with this issue for some times, and I can tell you that out of perhaps 90% of the people caught in the act belong to this certain ethnic group. You understand? There is no any other name to call it, as far, now I'm talking like the governor, that there's no other way for me to call it other than to say these are the people behind it. You understand? Because the other people that are being arrested are people who are accomplices, either the person who is supplying diesel, I mean petrol for their bikes or something of that nature.
Food supply.
Or food supply, right? So the issue is, I don't really think the presidency is actually towing the line it should tow, because, I mean, there's no point for you to seems to be backing some utterances who are, who are perceived to be, you know, divisive in nature, or that can lead to some, a catastrophe in the long run. Because by the time we started overheating the polity with some of these utterances, really, it's not going to augur well. And the presidency shouldn't be, the body language shouldn't be like, oh, you're actually backing these people up. Whatever pact you had during the electioneering campaigns, it should end at that. Whatever pact you have signed that I belong to you, you know, vote for me, I'm going to do this, it should end at that. What we're saying categorically at the level of CNG is that, look, we don't want anybody to be profiled, right? But the government should be seen to be doing what is right.
Do you think what Masari did amounted to profiling? What he said, beg your pardon, recently amounted to profiling?
It doesn't.
Because he more or less said, look, these people are Fulanis.
Yeah.
They are our brothers. We know them. They're the ones doing these things.
Yeah. You see, what I expect the Miyetti Allah to first and foremost start doing,
would it not be classified as profiling because he belongs to that group as well? Because he was the one. If somebody from outside that group, for instance, said that, would that be classified as profiling?
Okay, let me break it down, right? You see, the problem here is actually when we're fond of not really cautioning our own or calling a spade when, because I belong here, but when it goes that direction, then I'll be able to say it the way I should say it. You know, and that's very bad in itself. If somebody like Masari is saying it, you see, it's beyond all this, whether you belong to, you are a Yoruba man or you're a Fulani man, it's beyond that. What we're saying is that lives are being lost on daily basis. So are you saying that the people who are getting killed daily, they amount to riffraffs or nonsense or whatever it is you want to call it?
Count.
Because you see, the lives that has been lost in Zamfara State alone within this time, I mean, this space of time we're talking about, supersede whatever you can say this particular ethnic group has actually caused in other parts of the country. Just Zamfara State alone.
And incidentally, Samaila, those lives you're talking about include Fulanis as well.
Includes Fulanis as well. You know, it's just like I came here the last time, I mentioned how the iPod people were killing the police officers, including Igbo officers. So whatever you say you want to do, you have to put on your thinking cap that, oh, I want to make a statement, but I'm also killing my brothers in the process. Whatever statement any bandit is trying to make, it doesn't make any sense in the long run. You're killing your own brothers as well. So what message are you trying to send in the long run? Because you see, that of Zamfara, sometimes I just sit down, I just can't wrap my head around it to really know what is it about. It's senseless killing, and people are just watching, nobody is saying anything.
But Ismaila, let me come in here, because what you said is very instructive. It's time we tell ourselves the truth even as our own. Now, when the conversation on open grazing comes up, a lot of the, the Fulani ethnic group thinks it is a personal attack on the pastoralist life style of the header. But then again, you have seen that the conversation on open grazing is key now, because one, whether we like it or not, there are some people marauding and also hiding under the cluster group of that ethnicity to perpetrate crime. Do you not think that it is absolutely very important for the profiling to happen so that people will be able to understand who the strangers are within the community of the real people who are really doing business as headers?
Yeah, okay, that's important. But first and foremost, I also like to call on the Miyetti Allah to first do the needful. Sometimes if you, as a parent, for instance, you come around and your children are fighting, you understand. Even though sometimes the culture says, oh, this one is the eldest, don't blame him in the presence of the younger one. You should be able to call the eldest that you know is at fault inside and scold him and tell him this is where you have gone wrong. They should be able to rein their own people in. That's if they have access to them, because sometimes what you have is people gather together in the name of some international press conference in Abuja while they are totally detached from the real people they are representing. Because if you have access to them, you should be able to tell them that, please, it seems you're really battering our image, and it's high time this nonsense stops. We are a people of pride. We hold ourselves in high esteem. You shouldn't do this to the image of the Fulanis across Africa. You understand? This is what is causing us. Just like we keep talking about Nigerians, how they have dented our image overseas. So there should be that part first and foremost before you come on air to start defending what is not defensible sometimes. Because let's forget about what's happening in the South. What about what's happening down the North? I mean, you get what I'm saying?
The
so
killings.
Really, there is a need for them to be able to rein their people in. Then secondly, there is that need for synergy between the government and this Miyetti Allah. When I say there's a need for that is, if you seem to be sympathetic to their ploy, you should be able to sit down to say, look, let's be honest to ourselves. What do you think we can do about this?
But do you not think the president also, his silence means that he's speaking from both sides of the
He has always been silent over different issues. So really, I'm not going to go into his silence over this matter.
But on a very sensitive issue such as this, should he continue to be silent? Because really, he isn't really silent. He's actually been speaking. His body language is clear where he stands on the matter. But let's have Kasim Febua on this as well. Still talking about the Miyetti Allah and the rhetorics have been spewing recently. One of the things I said was more or less ridiculing and mocking southern governors for passing anti-open grazing laws and saying Benue State did it. What is happening in Benue now? Is Benue secure? What are the deeper meanings of that statement?
Well, thank you, and let me commend the elocution of my friend
Smiler
Musa, because ordinarily you hardly see people from the north speak in this very honest manner on this issue because it's sensitive and they feel that their family will be endangered and all of that. But we're talking about a national calamity that is so fundamental that it affects the lives of you and me. And so to that extent, I think we should learn to call a spade a spade. And what has emboldened Miyetti Allah is because the federal government under President Muhammadu Buhari has been very, very taciturn, withdrawn, silent, and kept in the inner fortress of Aso Villa, not being able to connect the dots or interrogate those persons who are making provocative statements to incite the public. And let me send a note of warning to the Miyetti Allah man who conducted press interview. I was expecting him to go to the forest to go and conduct that press interview. And let us see whether it will be aired everywhere or talk to the Fulanis in the forest. But the point is, nobody, like I said earlier, has the monopoly of violence. That's one. And for you to think that you, as a visitor, as a pastoralist, you will come to any community and dominate that community is the mark, is the highest mark of foolishness. That's the truth. Because I'm from Okwela. We'll be having issues of this nature in my community. People couldn't go to farm. We had to assemble ourselves and talk to ourselves. We have able-bodied youths, we have hunters, we have vigilantes. They woke up. Now, if you see any, of course, some of our people are rearing cows. There are Fulanis in my community. They have to live within the dictates of our own terms. If anybody is trying to provoke crisis within my community with respect to say you are a Miyetti Allah operator, you want to come on, they will get the result instantly. So you cannot know the geography of my domain more than me because you are a pastoralist. And what is giving them this kind of confidence, and arrogance is because rather than for the federal government under President Buhari to call them to order, they are going ahead to say, let us revisit grazing routes. You saw the Attorney General of the Federation and the Minister of Justice, spoke to that when the southern governors assembled in Asaba to make this pronouncement barely 2 months ago. You saw the way he was speaking with passion, as if he's representing one country against other country, as if the North is not a country of its own, different from the South. We are talking about a problem that exists that connects both of us, South, North, South. Even within your own domain, people are being killed. And yet what you could do is to tell us of one antiquated, barbaric grazing routes that have been overtaken by this thing. At any rate, where are the grazing routes? They are not in the South. The grazing routes are under the northern laws. They are in the North. So if an Attorney General cannot connect the dots of the legalese of this whole process, then who should? This is exactly why these persons feel that, they are on top of the world. One of their own is the president of the country. We can't do them anything and all of that. But they will be mistaken by the time the thing comes to full circle.
Kasim, it's quite instructive that you say that, because even some of the papers detail that some members of the headers community are also asking for 750,000 acres of land, I think in Delta State or so, and demanded it from the state government. But one of the things that Miyetti Allah also called was for a desperate plea to the National Assembly to come to their rescue. And one of the things they said was that they wanted National Assembly to resuscitate and pass the Grazing Reserves Commission Bill and other livestock management bill initiated by the previous National Assembly, rather than looking at the anti-grazing bill. Where do you think that the voice of the National Assembly comes into this? Because they have said that they have no right, because it's neither on the concurrent or on the exclusive list.
You see, anything that has to do with land is domiciled with the state government. That is our law. And it is enshrined in the 1999 Constitution. And you cannot now twist the governor of a state to grant you a particular portion of land within his domain in such an arrogant manner because you feel that you are a herder or because you are a Miyetti Allah. For God's sake, If you know how to press the trigger of an AK-47, other persons know how to do it. But because it has become barbaric in these modern times to so do, some of us with our Western education feel civilized not to indulge in that. But if it gets, when push comes to show, it will be a contest of gun versus gun. But we don't want it to get to that level. That's why we are calling on the federal government. It has a higher responsibility. Rather than say encourage ranching with its productivity, with its economic value, to the economy of the nation. Federal government is telling people or saying that they should go and revisit the grazing routes. It means that you are indulging the activities of these persons. And it will come to a time that even the innocent ones will fall into the trap. Because if you are now if you are now expressing this kind of arrogance to say that you can pass your anti-grazing law, that we are coming for you, you'll be making a mistake. You can boast, you can make all your boast. This
body language, which seems to be coming out from the point of view of the president. Do you think it's also affecting the security agencies as well on how they react in terms of supporting the states who have passed this anti-grazing law, open grazing law, in implementing it? Because that's why I asked the earlier question what the Miyetti Allah Kautal Hore said about Benue State and mocking the state that is still immersed in violence and crisis even when he passed that law.
Do you blame Miyetti Allah? It's the federal government.
But what about the security agencies? Do you think they're also taking some cues somewhere?
The federal government has a bigger responsibility to play because it is the only institution, according to Max Hegel, that has capacity to commit violence and go scot-free. That's the federal government or government at any level. But the point is, you have to first of all, X-ray the role of the federal government or its intervention each time cases like this come up. Now, if you are mocking a particular state, that when they pass anti-grazing law, you have made their place almost ungovernable for the governor. What is the role of the federal government that has control over the security agencies? A governor of a state has no power to give directives to any of the security agencies, including the police. So, now, look at what happened in Plateau. What was federal government statement? What did you read when they were dumping corpses right at the doorstep of the state government? What was federal government role? What did they say? They were more interested in responding to the statement of Governor Tom than responding to the carnage that was going on in Plateau State. So I think life has become cheap, very cheap, under President Buhari, and his body language of silence, which is very ominous, is also like, fueling the crisis and the provocations and the killing.
But do you not think that they are also emboldened by the silence of the northern leaders and stakeholders in the north? Because, it is a generality of thought that it is not just that the Miyetti Allah is coming to speak for a group. In fact, some people are credited to speaking for the whole region.
No, I will not generalize. Even just this morning, I read what the Sultan of Sokoto said. Okay. When he said the presidency should rather than integrate bandits or terrorists or whatever into the society, they should be prosecuted and arrested. That's a northern leader of note, if you ask me, number one northern leader. And I've read Northern Elders Forum severally saying that Buhari is giving them a bad name and that he should be condemned for whatever he's doing, and that he's also making life difficult for the average northerner. I've read all that also. So they are speaking. It's not that they are not speaking. Okay. But you see, the few who are speaking, their voices are lost in the crowd or the maddening crowd of those who are now promoting this onslaught. If a man like the secretary of the Miyetti Allah can make that kind of utterance on national television and is not been invited to go and answer to queries at the DSS or at the police. If Kasim Afegwa speak like that now, look at the naval guy who just spoke on channels. They were all invited to Abuja for questioning. And by the time I leave here, I won't be surprised if by the time they are inviting me for questions that I made one particular statement that the president does not like. But a man is threatening the peace and stability and tranquility of this country, thinking that as a pastoralist that he has the right over my land, and you want us to remain quiet and you are silent, and you say you are a government fighting this? No. Aside from that, government must exploit the resource of dialogue. I keep saying this because under a democracy, you need to dialogue. You need to.
Kasim, just to take it in here from here because we're running out of time. Let's get some. What's your final words? Because he said vehemently that the president's silence means consent, and that it needs the voice of a leader to come out in whole terms to be able to condemn and say this is wrong. We must stop. What's your final words?
Okay, it's really, for me, I really don't like going into the silence of the president. I mean, for 6 years, he hasn't been talking. You get what I'm saying?
Well, should we resign to that?
Should we
resign to that?
What choice do we have? I mean, we're just counting days that they have 2 years to go, you understand? So we have resigned, we have taken to fate in that regard.
Less than 2 years.
Less than 2 years. So really, and you see, the good thing is that there's a way that the records are being kept of whatever you do. Because if the man has never ascended to that throne, some of our people will eventually be thrown in his grave to worship that, oh, this is God sent and you didn't allow him. But you see, having said that, is that there should be a way out of this logjam, right? It's a logjam because it seems to not be working both on the side of the government and on the side of the citizenry. We heard of Ruga sometimes back. We don't know, it was trashed now. We had of some transformation, land transformation, blah, blah. It's trashed now. Now it's grazing routes. Whatever it is, please stop shifting the evil days. Address this thing once and for all. If this is going to be the only thing you achieve during your tenure, let it be what you achieved. And the issue of granting amnesty to criminals, you see, I see a lot of faults in that. Number one is I'm not seeing properly profiling of these people. There's a need for serious tap to be put on them to know where they are per time. What are they doing per time? There's a need for security check on them on daily basis to know, are they trying to recruit more people? Because if you wreak havoc, you run out of food, then you come out, you raise your hand that you want to embrace amnesty, and then once that is done, you are feeling relief a bit, then you go back because you needed more money. Then later on, you come back, you raise your hand. That's bullshit. Please, let's just be stopped.
Thanks for checking out SYMFONI on YouTube. Please be sure to subscribe and like our videos for updates.